My boyfriend and sister tried to kill me for insurance money. The night my brakes failed, my sister was the first person to cry at my hospital bed. She held my hand, pressed her forehead against my knuckles, and whispered, "I thought we lost you." My boyfriend stood behind her with red eyes and a shaking voice. But 3 days later, a detective placed a folder on my lap and said, "Mara, someone took out a life insurance policy on you 6 weeks ago." I asked who. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me like he hated what he was about to say. And that was the moment I learned love doesn't always leave bruises. Sometimes it signs paperwork first. My name is Mara Whitfield, and before all of this happened, I thought I had a small, ordinary life. I was 39, divorced once, no children, working as an office manager for a dental practice in a town where everyone knew what church you attended, what car you drove, and whether your lawn needed mowing. I lived in the little blue house my father left me when he passed. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. 2 bedrooms, a screened back porch, and a rose bush my mother planted the year before she died. My younger sister, Tessa, always said I was lucky. "You got the house," she would remind me. Not angrily, not at first. Just with that soft, wounded tone that made me feel guilty for owning something I never asked to inherit. Tessa had always struggled. Bad jobs, bad men, bad timing, at least that was how she explained it. I was the responsible one, she was the emotional one. That was the family story. And I believed it for almost 40 years. Then I met Brent. Brent was charming in a quiet way, not flashy, not arrogant. He remembered little things, my coffee order, my favorite old movies, the fact that I hated lilies because they smelled like funeral homes. We met at a fundraiser for the animal shelter. He was there helping set up tables, and I noticed him because he was the only man in the room who didn't act like carrying folding chairs was a heroic act. He made me laugh that night. Within 3 months, he was spending most evenings at my house. Within 6 months, he had a toothbrush in my bathroom and a favorite coffee mug in my kitchen. Tessa adored him. That should have been my first warning. My sister had hated every man I ever dated. She said my ex-husband was controlling before I admitted it. She said another boyfriend had dead eyes. She said one man was using me because I had a house and a steady job. But Brent was different. "He really sees you," Tessa told me one Sunday after dinner. I remember smiling because I wanted that to be true. "He's good for you," she said. Then she added, "And honestly, Mara, you deserve someone after all these years." At the time, it sounded loving. Later, I realized it sounded rehearsed. The first strange thing happened in March. I came home from work and found Brent in my office closet. He jumped when I opened the door. I laughed because I thought I had scared him. "What are you doing?" I asked. He held up a box of old papers. "Looking for your printer ink? You said it was in here." I had said that. But the box in his hands wasn't printer supplies. It was where I kept old tax returns, my father's will, the deed to the house, and insurance paperwork from when Dad died. Brent must have seen my expression because he set it down quickly. "Sorry," he said, "I started digging and got lost." I brushed it off. People dig through closets. People make mistakes. That is how betrayal survives at first. It hides inside normal things. 2 weeks later, Tessa called me crying. Not normal crying, not the kind where you already know what happened. This was dramatic, breathless, almost theatrical. "I messed up," she said. My stomach tightened. "What happened?" She told me she was behind on rent, again. Her hours had been cut, her car needed repairs, her landlord was threatening eviction. I sat at my kitchen table while Brent made dinner behind me, and I listened as my sister unraveled. "How much?" I asked. She hesitated. 3,000. I closed my eyes. I had savings, but not endless savings. I had a mortgage-free house, but that didn't mean I was rich. Before I could answer, Brent turned from the stove and mouthed, "Help her." I gave him a look. He whispered, "She's family." So I transferred Tessa the money. She cried harder and promised she would pay me back. She never did. Then came the life insurance conversation. It started so casually, I almost forgot about it. Brent and I were sitting on the porch after dinner. Rain tapped against the screen. He was talking about a coworker whose wife had died suddenly. "No one thinks about this stuff until it's too late," he said. I nodded. He looked at me. "Do you have life insurance?" I laughed. "For who? My houseplants." "I'm serious. I don't have kids, Brent." "You have Tessa." That made me pause. He continued, gently. "If something happened to you, wouldn't you want her taken care of?" I should have found it strange. Instead, I felt ashamed. Because yes, I had thought about Tessa. I had worried what would happen to her if I wasn't around to rescue her anymore. "I have something through work," I said. "Small policy." "How small?" "I don't know, maybe 50,000. He nodded like he was only curious. Then he reached for my hand. "You're a good sister," he said. That sentence stayed with me. It made me want to be one. A week later, Tessa started dropping by more often. At first, I liked it. She helped me cook. She folded laundry while I worked late. She and Brent joked easily, like they had known each other forever. Sometimes I would walk into the room, and they would stop talking. Not abruptly, not obviously. Just enough. "What?" I asked one evening. Tessa smiled. "Nothing, Brent was telling me you snore." "I do not." Brent grinned, only a little. It felt warm. It felt like family. That is the part that still makes me angry. Not that they lied. That they made me feel safe inside the lie. By May, Brent had started borrowing my car. His truck was acting up, then it needed a part, then the mechanic was backed up. I didn't mind at first. I worked close to home. He worked farther away. He always filled the gas tank. One Friday, I noticed my driver's seat was pushed much farther back than usual. That was nothing. Then I noticed a small black smudge near the lower dashboard, right above the brake pedal. I remember touching it with my finger. Grease. When I asked Brent about it, he said he had checked my brake fluid because the pedal felt soft. "You didn't tell me that," I said. "I didn't want to worry you." That should have worried me. Instead, I thanked him. 3 days before the crash, Tessa invited me to dinner. That alone was strange. My sister never hosted unless someone else paid for the food. She sounded excited on the phone. "I want to do something nice for you," she said. "You're always helping me." I almost said no. I was tired. Work had been brutal, and I had a headache that had followed me all day. But Brent encouraged me. "You should go," he said. "She's trying." So I went. Tessa made pasta, garlic bread, and a salad she barely touched. She kept refilling my wine glass. I only drank one glass because I had to drive. She watched me too closely. At one point she asked, "Are you happy, Mara?" I laughed. That's a heavy dinner question. "I mean with Brent." "Yes." "Do you trust him?" I looked at her surprised. "Of course." Her eyes filled with tears. I thought she was moved. Now I wonder if some small part of her was begging me to say no. The crash happened the next morning. I was driving to work on County Road 18, the narrow 2-lane road that curves past the old mill. I remember the sun flashing through the trees. I remember the radio playing low. I remember pressing the brake before the curve and feeling the pedal sink too far. At first, my brain refused to understand. I pressed harder. The car didn't slow. The curve came at me fast. I yanked the wheel, clipped the gravel shoulder, and the whole car spun. There are sounds you never forget. Metal screaming. Glass bursting. Your own voice making a sound you don't recognize. Then silence. When I woke up, there was a man outside my broken window telling me not to move. My arm was pinned, my ribs felt like knives, blood ran into my eye. I asked him to call Brent. He said help was coming. I asked him to call my sister. He said, "Ma'am, don't talk, just breathe." At the hospital, Brent arrived first. He looked destroyed. He kissed my forehead and kept saying, "I should have been driving. I should have taken the car." Tessa came in after him, sobbing so hard a nurse had to tell her to lower her voice. They looked like people who loved me. Everyone thought so. The nurses. The doctor. Even me. I had a fractured wrist, 2 cracked ribs, a concussion, and bruising across my chest from the seatbelt. The doctor said I was lucky. Tessa cried when he said that. Brent turned away. At the time, I thought he was overwhelmed. Now I know he was calculating what went wrong. The police came the next day. An officer asked basic questions. Had I been drinking? Was I distracted? Had the car been giving me trouble? I said the brakes failed. Brent immediately stepped in. She mentioned they felt soft, he said. I looked at him. No, I didn't. His face changed for half a second. Then he recovered. You don't remember, I told you I noticed it too. The officer wrote something down. Tessa touched my shoulder. Mara, you hit your head, she said softly. Don't push yourself. That was the first time I felt something cold move through me. Not fear yet. Not suspicion. Just a tiny crack. Because they were both looking at me the same way. Like I was a problem to manage. The detective came on the 3rd day. His name was Paul Mercer. Gray hair, calm voice, wedding ring, the kind of man who didn't waste words. He asked if Brent could leave the room. Brent frowned. I'm her boyfriend. Detective Mercer didn't blink. Then I'm sure you'll understand. Tessa stood too. He looked at her. Family can wait outside as well. The moment the door closed, my heart started pounding. Am I in trouble? I asked. No, he said, but I need to ask you some uncomfortable questions. He told me my car had been examined. The brake line had been cut. Not worn. Not damaged by the crash. Cut. I stared at him. That's not possible. I'm sorry. I tried to sit up and gasped from the pain. He told me not to move. Who had access to your car? He asked. I said Brent, then Tessa, then a few coworkers if they really wanted to, because my keys hung by the back door. He asked about money. I told him I wasn't wealthy. He asked about insurance. I told him I had a small work policy. Then his face changed. That was when he placed the folder on my lap. There is a second policy, he said, $250,000. I laughed. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my mind couldn't fit the words into reality. I don't have that, I said. You signed paperwork 6 weeks ago. No, I didn't. He opened the folder. There was my name. My date of birth. My address. My signature. Only it wasn't quite my signature. It was close. Very close. But my M had a loop in it, this one didn't. The beneficiary was listed as Brent Calloway. Secondary beneficiary, Tessa Whitfield. I couldn't breathe. Detective Mercer gave me a moment. Then he asked, did you authorize this? No. Did you know Brent listed himself as your fiancé? My mouth went dry. We're not engaged. He nodded once. Not surprised. That hurt worse somehow. Because it meant he had already guessed. I wanted to defend Brent. That was the humiliating part. Even with proof in my lap, some bruised part of my heart searched for a misunderstanding. Maybe someone stole his identity too. Maybe Tessa gave his name without him knowing. Maybe the detective was wrong. Then Mercer showed me the application. Emergency contact, Tessa. Medical history answers, all accurate. Employer, accurate. Salary, accurate. Father deceased, accurate. Mother deceased, accurate. Information only people close to me would know. Then came the twist that split me open. The policy had been purchased online. The email used was not mine. It was Tessa's old email address. The one she used in college. The one I had helped her create. I turned my face toward the hospital window because I refused to cry in front of a stranger. Detective Mercer waited. He didn't rush me. Finally, I whispered, they did this together. We're investigating, he said. But his voice told me yes. When Brent came back into the room, I watched him differently. That was the hardest thing I have ever done. To look at a man who kissed my forehead and wonder if his hands had cut my brake line. He sat beside me and reached for my good hand. I let him take it. My skin crawled. What did he want? Brent asked. Just more questions. Tessa stood by the window, arms crossed tight. About what? She asked. I looked at her. For the first time, I noticed she wasn't crying anymore. About the car, I said. Brent squeezed my hand too hard. I winced. He released me immediately. Sorry, babe. Babe. I had loved when he called me that. Now it sounded like a leash. Detective Mercer asked me not to confront them. He said they needed evidence. He said if Brent and Tessa realized I knew, they might run or destroy proof. So I became an actress in my own hospital room. I smiled weakly when Brent brought flowers. I thanked Tessa when she brushed my hair. I let them believe I was confused from the concussion. All while my heart pounded every time they came near my IV. On the 11th day, Tessa leaned close and whispered, "You should let Brent handle things while you recover." What things? Bills, insurance, the house. You don't need stress. The house. There it was again. My house had always been the quiet third person in every conversation with my sister. I said, I can handle my bills. Her mouth tightened. Only for a second. Then she smiled. Of course. That night, Brent tried to get my phone. Your battery's low, he said. I'll charge it. It's fine. I'm already standing. I said it's fine. He stared at me. Not lovingly. Not gently. Just stared. Then he smiled. Okay. After he left, I called Detective Mercer. The next day, they installed a small recording app on my phone with my permission. Mercer told me not to push, not to accuse, only to listen. I thought nothing would happen. I was wrong. Tessa came alone that afternoon. She brought soup I didn't want and sat beside my bed. For several minutes she talked about nothing, the weather, her landlord, a neighbor's dog. Then she said, Brent is falling apart. I stared at the TV mounted on the wall. Is he? He loves you, Mara. I said nothing. He made a mistake. My blood went cold. I turned slowly. What mistake? Tessa's face went pale. I mean, about the brakes, not making you get them checked. I kept my voice soft. You said he loves me. He does. Do you? Her eyes filled again. This time, the tears irritated me. Mara, don't do that. Do what? Make me the villain. I laughed once, and my ribs punished me for it. I almost died. And I have been here every day. That doesn't answer my question. She leaned closer. Her voice dropped. You don't understand what it's like to have nothing. There it was. Not grief. Not guilt. Resentment. I helped you, I said. You helped just enough to feel good about yourself. I stared at her. You think $3,000 fixes my life. You think letting me sit at your table and eat your leftovers makes us equal. Every word came out sharper than the last. You got Dad's house. I felt something inside me harden. Dad left me the house because I took care of him for 4 years. I was struggling. You were partying. Her face twisted. For a second, I saw the sister underneath the performance. Angry, bitter, tired of pretending. Then she said the sentence that told me everything. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. My hand tightened around the blanket. What wasn't? She froze. The door opened before she could answer. Brent walked in. Tessa stood too fast. He looked between us. What's going on? Nothing, she said. But Brent didn't believe her. His eyes went to me. Then to my phone. Then back to Tessa. Let's get coffee, he said. She followed him out. I waited 10 seconds, then checked the app. Recording saved. Detective Mercer listened to it that evening. His face gave nothing away, but I saw his jaw tighten. This helps, he said. Is it enough? Not yet. I wanted to scream. Not enough. My break line was cut, my signature was forged, my sister had practically confessed, and still it was not enough. That was when I understood why people get away with terrible things. Because truth and proof are not the same thing. I was discharged 2 days later. I refused to go home with Brent. He looked hurt in front of the nurse. "She shouldn't be alone," he said. "I won't be," I said. "My friend Linda is staying with me." That was a lie. Linda from work was not staying with me. But Detective Mercer had arranged for a patrol car to pass my house regularly, and my neighbor Mrs. Alvarez had been told to call police if she saw Brent or Tessa on the property. Brent hugged me carefully before I left. His mouth was near my ear when he whispered, "Don't let people put ideas in your head." I pulled back and looked at him. He smiled for everyone watching. I smiled back. By then, I hated him enough to survive him. At home, everything looked the same. That almost broke me. The coffee mug in the sink. Brent's jacket on the chair. Tessa's sweater folded over the couch. Proof that evil does not always kick down the door. Sometimes it leaves its things in your living room. Detective Mercer's team searched the house while I sat on the porch with Mrs. Alvarez. They found the first piece of real evidence in the garage. A receipt from an auto parts store. Brake line cutter. Disposable gloves. Paid in cash. But there was security footage from the store. Brent buying both. Still, he could claim he bought them for something else. Then they found the laptop. Not mine. Brent's old laptop, shoved behind storage bins in the hall closet. He had told me it was broken months earlier. It wasn't broken. On it were searches. How long after life insurance policy active? Brake line accident investigation. Can beneficiary collect if death ruled accident? My whole body went numb when Mercer read them. But the worst search was not Brent's. It was Tessa's. How to copy sister signature. I had to sit down. Not because I was surprised anymore. Because a memory hit me so hard I couldn't breathe. 6 weeks before the crash, Tessa had come over with a birthday card for our cousin. She said, "Sign this too so I can mail it." I had signed my name on a blank piece of paper because she said the card was in her car and she wanted to copy our messages neatly. I had laughed at how ridiculous she was. She had taken that paper. My sister had practiced my signature from it. That was the halfway point, the moment the story stopped being about a greedy boyfriend. Because Brent may have planned the murder. But Tessa gave him the map to my life. Mercer kept digging. The larger twist came 3 days later. He called me into the station because he wanted me to hear something before rumors reached me. I sat in a small interview room with my wrist in a cast and bruises fading yellow across my collarbone. He played a recording. At first, it was only muffled voices. Then Tessa. She changed the locks. Brent answered, "Not yet, she's still foggy. We need to move before she remembers too much." Tessa said, "You told me it would be quick." "It was supposed to be. You said she wouldn't feel anything." I covered my mouth. Mercer paused the recording. I shook my head, "No, play it." He did. Brent said, "Stop acting innocent, you wanted the money." Tessa snapped, "I wanted the house sold, I didn't say kill her." And then Brent laughed. Cold smile. "You signed the policy, Tess. You gave me her records. You told me when she'd be on that road." Silence. Then my sister whispered, "You promised we'd just scare her first." I leaned forward. "Scare me?" Mercer paused it again. "What does that mean?" I asked. He took a breath. "That's what we're trying to confirm." They confirmed it that night. The crash was not the first plan. The first plan had been to make me look unstable. Tessa had been stealing small things from my house and moving them around. My father's watch, my medication, my car keys. Brent had been telling people I was forgetful. He had told my neighbor I was drinking more. He had told one of my coworkers I seemed depressed. They were building a story. A fragile woman. No children. Dead parents. Family history of anxiety, exaggerated from the grief counseling I did after Dad died. If I died in a crash, people would whisper that maybe I had been distracted. Maybe careless. Maybe not entirely well. But the bigger twist was worse. Brent had done this before. Not successfully. Not exactly. A former girlfriend in another county had suffered a fall down basement stairs 2 years earlier. She survived, but she refused to cooperate with police at the time. Brent had taken money from her afterward and disappeared. Detective Mercer found her because of the insurance application. Same false engagement claim. Same emergency contact pattern. Same gentle, helpful man. Her name was Dana. She agreed to talk. When I met her over video, she looked older than her age. She said Brent had made her feel lucky too. He studies what you're missing, she told me, then he becomes it. I asked if Tessa knew. Dana's answer was quiet. Maybe not at first, but women always know when a man asks them to hurt someone. That sentence haunted me. Because Tessa had known enough. Enough to forge my name. Enough to help him access my documents. Enough to tell him my schedule. Enough to stand by my hospital bed and cry over work she helped start. The arrests happened on a Thursday morning. Brent was picked up outside his job. Tessa was arrested in her apartment parking lot. I didn't go watch. I thought I would want to see it. I didn't. I sat on my back porch while Mrs. Alvarez brought me tea I didn't drink. My phone rang all morning. Aunts, cousins, people who had ignored Tessa's chaos for years but suddenly had opinions about forgiveness. The first voicemail was from my Aunt Ruth. Myra, honey, I know you're hurt, but Tessa is your sister. Don't ruin her life. I deleted it. The second was from my cousin Blake. Brent is the real monster here. Tessa probably got manipulated. I deleted that one too. Then came a text from Tessa. I don't know how she sent it, maybe before they took her phone. It said, I never wanted you dead, I just wanted something to be fair for once. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed back, you almost made my grave your version of fair. I blocked her. The charges were serious. Attempted murder. Insurance fraud. Forgery. Conspiracy. Brent also faced charges connected to Dana's case after she finally agreed to testify. Tessa's lawyer tried to paint her as manipulated, lonely, financially desperate, under Brent's control. For a while, I worried people would believe it. Then prosecutors presented the recordings. The forged documents. The signature practice sheets found in Tessa's apartment. And the notebook. That was the final betrayal. The notebook was Tessa's. Inside were lists. My routines. My passwords she guessed. The value of my house. Names of realtors. Estimated insurance payout after taxes. And on one page, written in her messy handwriting. If Brent gets policy, I get house money. I read that line in court. I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it. Because I did. My sister had not been a victim of Brent's plan. She had negotiated her share. When it was my turn to give a statement, I walked to the front of the courtroom with my wrist still stiff and my ribs still aching when I breathed too deeply. I looked at Brent first. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Then I looked at Tessa. She was crying. Of course she was. I said, for most of my life, I believed my sister was unlucky. I excused the lies, the debts, the emergencies, because I thought loving someone meant rescuing them every time they set themselves on fire. Tessa lowered her head. I continued. But Tessa was not unlucky when she forged my name. She was not confused when she gave Brent my private records. She was not helpless when she helped him make me look unstable. She was not manipulated when she planned what to do with my house after I died. My voice shook then. But I did not stop. I survived because a stranger on the road called 911. I survived because my seatbelt held. I survived because the car hit the ditch at the right angle, not because either of you changed your minds. I looked at my sister. You cried at my hospital bed because I was alive. The courtroom went silent. That was the moment I stopped being the responsible sister. I became the woman who told the truth. Brent took a plea before trial was over. He received 22 years. Tessa gambled on sympathy. She lost. She was sentenced to 12 years. With additional probation after release and restitution, she would likely never pay. Some family members said it was too harsh. I told them they were welcome to visit her. Then I changed my number. Afterward, I sold the little blue house. People were shocked by that. They thought I would cling to it because it had been Dad's. But the house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a crime scene with roses. Before I left, I dug up a cutting from my mother's rose bush and planted it in a large clay pot. Mrs. Alvarez hugged me goodbye and said, "Your father would be proud." For the first time in months, I cried without feeling weak. I moved 2 towns over into a smaller place with a fenced yard and locks I chose myself. I started therapy. I adopted an old beagle named Henry, who snores louder than any man I have ever dated. I still have scars. One on my wrist, one near my hairline, and one I can't show anyone, where my sister used to live inside my heart. People ask if I forgive her. I tell them forgiveness is not a door I owe anyone. Maybe one day I will open it for my own peace. But I will never hand her a key again. Last month, I received a letter from Tessa in prison. I knew her handwriting immediately. For a moment, I was 10 years old again, watching my little sister chase fireflies in the yard while Dad laughed from the porch. Then, I remembered the brake pedal sinking beneath my foot. I opened the letter. It began, "Mara, I know you think I'm a monster." I folded it back up. I did not read the rest. Instead, I walked outside and watered my mother's rose bush. It had bloomed for the first time since the move. One bright red flower. Stubborn. Alive. Mine. And for once, that was enough.